Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Blabbit. We're very excited to have transformation coach Izabela Lundberg on with us today. For anyone that's not been with us before, my name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working in teaching, coaching, managing salespeople for the better part of the last 2 decades, and just working on helping people become better communicators and influencers. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Glenn. It's great to see you. For anybody who's watching Blabbit for the first time, my name is Paul Geiger. I am a New York City public speaking coach and presentation expert, an overall curious guy. That's probably what makes me so well suited for this job. It's amazing what we learn every week when we talk to our wonderful guests. So obviously, in terms of all these different perspectives that we have, I see things through a presentation and public speaking lens. I can't help it. It's my nature. All right, but we have the return of one of our favorite guests, Izabela.
Hello, Glenn and Paul. It's absolute pleasure to be back with you in the studio and discuss hot topics on the Blabbit. Great to see you both.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. I want to jump right into a post that's about 23 hours and 50 minutes old that you made yesterday, talking about clarity and effective communicating. A couple of things that I preached for years. I'd like to hear your position right now on typically what businesses are seeing with clarity of their communication.
That is an excellent question, and I'm glad you bring in the back because that is something that we're seeing based on statistics and analysis. What is going on in 2021? We're seeing so many competing priorities, and as a result, communication gets fragmented, does not get disseminated correctly through whole aspects of organization, right? And as a result, things get even more so complicated and confusing. We cannot communicate something if we don't have a clarity, first of all, in our own mind, right? And a lot of times we're seeing people speaking, consuming so many words, yet are they truly communicating? Are they connecting with others? And how that is received. Paul knows more than anybody how important is choice of words and the tone and tonality, right? And what is intention behind it? But more than anything also is how do we go and address very challenging situations? And how do we face those challenging situations? As a leaders, as coaches, we have to, right? It's no run around that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm thinking of as you're describing this, Izabela, is the fact that it sounds like it's almost too big of a task. With everything that's going on, it just seems overwhelming that a company or that leadership should be worried about the communication throughout the entire company. What I'm wondering is it something that can start from grassroots, or is that part of the problem? The fact that there's so many moving parts to what you would call your communication style or your methods of communication. Are there things that individuals can do, or do you think it starts at the top? And you too, Glenn, I'd love to hear from you about this.
It's an excellent question. What I'm seeing actually is the depending of the culture organization, right? And depending pre-existing type of leadership in their style and how they traditionally communicated and how much they were transparent, how much they engage the rest of the team and whatnot. And I believe that could be done if it's a cultivated proper leadership to allow to be from grassroots perspective. But more than anything, what we're seeing is issues that are considering even clarity in terms of what are our priorities and input on around to gain that clarity. So we're excluding huge pool of the people that work on the project or are supporting organizations that thrive. We're not leveraging what we already have. And that is also a tremendous issue that we're seeing. It's not just only how it's communicated, but what is communicated and who is included in a part of a decision making to communicate properly information to others.
Mm-hmm. Don't you think a lot of the times it's probably your best way is the middle of the road? You may have the top leadership that talks at, not to their people. Then you have the people that take their hands off and just say, here's what I want done, you go do it. And they don't really know how it's being performed. You have those two extremes that are probably neither one proper. And it's hard to get that middle of the road to where you actually have a team atmosphere and everyone is on the same page and has a cohesive point of view.
I agree. Always is the best to really find the middle of grounds and then include everyone and start from there and then just to create a ripple effect. But if you don't have that, you're right. You then operate with so many polarities. And as a result, we know what happens, right? Talent is leaving, performance is low, horrible customer service and expectations, things get delayed, and as a result, more and more conflicts. And do we need more conflicts in today's world and more problems, do we?
No.
Absolutely not.
Not at all. Now, do you believe that leadership is recognizing that it must be more open to feedback from employees? In other words, be more willing to take feedback about the situation? And do you feel that employees have a stronger place of empowerment now because of the circumstances? And like you said, talent's moving around and going here, there, and everywhere.
Yes.
Has the pendulum swung a little bit more to the side of the employees get to dictate a little bit more than they did maybe 2 years ago? I don't know. Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing a little bit of that, and this is an excellent question. Just from all the conversation, from leadership roundtables to masterminds to board of directors conversations, I'm seeing, again, depending on the organization size, culture, and savviness. One thing is really, really crystal clear. We have an insane deficit of competent leaders right now. And at the same time, we're also having such a huge gap of the future leaders that needs to be trained, and they cannot happen overnight, right? So with that deficit, we're also seeing huge deficit in terms of competent talent and talent that wants to stay and wants to perform. So when you have competing two things, developing leaders that you're already short of, and also trying to develop talent, and then also making sure that they stay and you preserve, you have to look at that lens, meaning I need to know what's important to you. I cannot just assume, and I cannot dictate that any longer. Some organizations are doing better than the others. But again, looking DNA of existing leadership makeup and as well as management, it's going to make huge differentiator. Who is going to quickly switch, who is maybe already there or needs a little bit tweaking, and organizations that truly need a lot of work.
Well, the reason I kind of pointed out those 2 points is I've literally been working with 2 different companies this week that are polar opposites. We have one that's been established for 40 years. They've always done things the way they've done. They're not quite catching up with what needs to go because the owner is so slow to move and does not empower his employees.
Yes.
The one that's completely hands off and lets employees take off and do things that maybe they're not qualified for or really truly know, and that creates problems. So I think either way you're looking at that, there is no right or wrong. There are different degrees of wrong probably, but
Yes.
You have to have a team in order to move. It's almost like, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a cooperative and cohesive team to truly build a company.
I can't agree more. And one interesting thing I wanted to also share, I'm sure that you will agree with this as well. We're seeing way too much jargon thrown in communication, and also expectations and cultural nomenclature that actually should change, because we're seeing so many different movements that are dictating that as well. And I love what you said, because we're not ready as the leaders ourselves, we're creating huge impediment on others. But as you said, also, if you let it reins free for someone who is not skilled, that's why mentorship and coaching comes in place, and then consulting and supporting, right? So more than ever, I'm seeing accelerated need for advisory on high level, also high level, obviously, coaching and support that is also very often blended with the mentoring. And as a result, I can see that when you show examples of really good cohesiveness of the team, and tapping into everybody's strengths, I think that is the magic. And starting small, starting with pods, starting with the individual groups, where people are identifying or self-identifying and giving them that chance, it's a perfect way to start. And it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. And fortunately, I don't know why we overcomplicate everything. Please tell me that.
It's just human nature.
Really?
I think so. Here's another aspect of human nature, and this is something I'm sure that you witness as a leadership advisor and leadership coach. Here's another aspect, and that is, I'm getting a little lag time here, Glenn. Okay. One of the things that I'm noticing, or one of the things that I'm sure you notice, is that leaders, we all do, have blind spots.
Yeah.
Is there a consistent blind spot that you're seeing recurring, maybe based on circumstances, maybe not? Obviously, everything is changing so quickly. This is just an amazing time to sort of rewrite the roadmap. But is there a consistent blind spot that you see?
Actually, it is. And I'm also another phenomenal question, Paul. What I'm seeing is that delegation. In times when we're having crisis and operating from the crisis, that is being imposed upon us, right? And we also wanted to push organization for growth. On top of it, you have all the other complications in day to day. You have to really know who you already have on the team. And sadly, not everybody have that idea. And as a result, one of the blind spots was, oh, I wish I spent and invested more time with my team so I know who can I delegate to whom and what. And also because so many layoffs and so much of changes, who is that next person in the line for X, Y, and Z that I know it's going to do a phenomenal job, right? But also, besides obviously communication, and then also how do you divide tasks? Who is for maybe up for promotion and who is constantly asking to do more and willing to take a risk? And me as a leader, am I willing to take a risk with them and let that go and loosen up a little bit the reins, right? So those are the blind spots that constantly keep coming, obviously, because either we think we can or have to do all on our own, which creates the burnout and creates so much more exhaustion. And as a result, sometimes honestly, reaction and poor decisions.
Yes. And, we've been hearing this over and over, Glenn, right? In Blabbit. As soon as Izabela said the word delegation or lack of delegation, I could see Glenn's eyes light up. And me too, was like, oh, we've been hearing a lot about this. Go ahead, sir.
Well, it's just, I think you mentioned coaching and stuff like this because I've been working in and around coaching or consulting for 20 years. And it seems to me that the accelerator has been placed upon differentiating of opinions, beliefs, and thoughts more in the last 10 years than for maybe the last 50. So if you don't have someone to help you bridge those communications, bridge those gaps of how to build a team, when you have people from their 20s to their 60s working in the same organization, I think you're going to have communication issues. What do you think about this, Bella?
I love that you touched on multi-generational aspects of it and what's important and how it is to communicate. And on top of it, we're talking about really diversity based on skill sets, right? Not only just a very obvious diversity elements that we've been hearing for years in the past years. So even now, how do we disseminate information and who cares for what and how they want it to be informed? It's like I'm hearing it's like, oh, we're doing more texting than ever before, or we're using all these different tools, and are those tools really the most cohesive and the best way to use for multi-generational workforce? And how do you bring everybody to the table and to accept and agree, right? Or learn to disagree, but still continue to do and put the best effort. So those elements are definitely there. But we have to also figure it out. And this is something that I also find huge blind spot. A lot of people get too comfortable and stop learning. And they're unwilling to change and they resist the change. Reality is this. Doesn't matter how much you resist, that change is going to persist. It's going to keep happening. And it's not just the boss's fault or leadership team fault. Everything around us is changing. So the quicker we embrace that on individual contribution, on individual level, the better and more effective we will be.
Something came to mind when you were talking about that. And it's kind of interesting because I've been having these conversations with my beautiful 24-year-old daughters over the past few months. And it's a comment that my father-in-law has used for years. It's business, it's not personal. And it seems as though maybe our younger generation is having a difficult time differentiating from the fact that a comment can be business, not personal. So do you see or deal with that very much as far as maybe coaching, consulting, counseling people on communication to understand that it's okay for me to say that you did something not to your best ability? That's not a personal attack. That's professional criticism.
This is a very hot topic, and one excellent, again, question-wise, that we have to acknowledge. We're seeing not only different generations, again, different cliches, different routines, different DMOs, daily operations, and how they interact, right? And what they expect, and what is considered courtesy on one end, what is not considered on the other, right? Or what is considered just the nice of someone from experience, for which the wisdom could be put down from someone from younger generation. So having dialogue and creating the culture where it's fully integrated, but also having all those spectrums exposed and having really honest agreement what that means in their mind, how they hear it versus how it's intended, I think will help and solve tremendous issue. But as we know, even with the best intention, if a tone is off, you know if somebody's patronizing you and putting you down or looking at you from very different perspective that you just don't want to be part of, right? And I'm seeing a lot of people, specifically younger generation, as you're mentioning, having a hard time, right? But also baby boomers and older generation feeling lost because for them it's too much of the change, too fast, too quickly. And they're also trying to figure out, we're not ready to retire, we still want to contribute. My wisdom and experience matter, why I'm not utilized and being used in situation. And for them also was as the hardest pill for some of them to find that some 20-year-old, 30-year-old will be leading the team, and then how do you adjust and adapt to that very different style? So when we have magnitude of changes like that, I really feel like sometimes we need to slow down to speed up. And what I mean with that is opportunity to truly address elephants in the room, what exactly all those issues are, and what we are going to decide together, because it should not be overriding the power way. Or I have more experience, or I have more this, or more education. It's all about how we really do truly come together and to create that environment and have those tough conversations. It's truly 100% attributed to leadership in organization.
Well, do you feel that all of this, all of these things that the three of us are talking about and have been talking about for a long time, have always come under the umbrella of best practices? Do you think that the recent crisis has sort of been an equalizer? In other words, it has pulled the cover off. In other words, it's not just that would be a nice thing to do, but this is a necessary thing that we now have to do. As you were saying before, change doesn't wait. And it's been totally exposed. No one is, at this point, bad choice of words, but no one is immune.
That is so true, and for some of them, yes. But this is the situation, Glenn, and just to kind of put a perspective on the landscape that we entered with this magnitude of crisis, right? 2019, we had the largest exodus of those CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, by far than any previous decades. And for whole sum of that, we're on the issues that you would think people will get smarter and better, that financial embezzlement is not the right way to do, or sexual misconduct's a part of the history, and so many others. They had on average 3 to 4 misconducts. Some of them were given chance to resign, but we know the board director pushed them out because appetite and tolerance was so, because there were so many fed up individuals to say, we can't tolerate this anymore because this is not matching current state of business, period. Mm-hmm. And then now when you enter with already Swiss cheese gaps in leadership and you don't have a heads and agreement, and as you know, every exodus of C-suite, doesn't matter how large, but specifically with large companies, others leave as well, right? They're the buddies, the friends, the colleagues, because that is not the behavior is not anymore terminated and as tolerated, and as termination occurs, we have exodus of a lot of choices, decisions, and direction. So direction and tone that was set for 2020, where many organizations was already diminished greatly. And then you have this insanity that nobody truly was prepared for what 2020 played out. So much misinformation, so much polarization, so much issues after issues that affected not only cities and states and countries, but also people simultaneously with magnitude of personal issues that never were a forefront right now, right? How do we work? How do we coexist? How we operate? How we work remotely? Because not everybody had an equal infrastructure to really make that the best possible. And frankly, not everybody were prepared emotionally, mentally, psychologically in general, but also physically to deal with that magnitude of those complexities. So no wonder we're having what we're having right now.
So are you saying that it actually, this you could feel this coming in 2019, even prior to, you could feel it even before what we call the crisis hit, which is, we can say it was March of 2020. So you could feel this wave coming. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. And then also through conversations that I had in the first quarter till March of 15 through some of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and through in interviews and conversations with them. And when everything then stopped and slowed down and you could tell the panic, the organizations that already invested very well in their talent and just overall in our organizational effectiveness and organizational development did phenomenally. And the ones that played the games and said, oh, that's not important, we should just worry about sales and technology and all the other stuff and things we're doing, everything we cover under carpet, as of so to speak, we're sweeping under carpet, start coming out, and it's right now in our face. And that's why we see some of them are doing better than the others, but in reality, every single organization has a magnitude of challenges. Only difference it is how is that communicated externally, how that bleeds through to customers and consumers. But everything you need to know, you can easily find and see what clients and what employees are saying, either current or past. And that is again, digital footprint, the media. People are sharing Glassdoors and similar platforms. They're telling quite a bit of very interesting, not only ratings on the CEOs and leaders and boards of directors, but also rating on the managers. And you can quickly depict and see what actual issues are. And always are related to leadership and talents.
You know, what came to mind when you were talking there a few moments ago was you talked about exodus and, you know, maybe the waves of people leaving, which I think in the past they may have been smaller waves, which we may see become larger waves with what's moving forward. I look back on 2 different times in my career where vice presidents, stuff like that moved on that I had good relationships with, maybe get out of jail free cards with and things like this, that all of a sudden you no longer have that security. Or just certainly people that you respected that were in leadership roles, and the people that came in behind them, you instantly did not have that same satisfaction that motivated you to go find a different solution.
And it's so true right now. It's like you need a magnitude solution, and then everything is competing, and you can't have a 10 or 15 top priorities. It's impossible. People in overdrive. As a result, they're also burned out. And as a result, because, you know, some people had to pick up slack from others during the recession or whatever you want to call it, the challenge of the pain of 2020. And right now, for example, I had someone that I interviewed last night for Legacy Leaders podcast, for example, and joined me from Australia. Australia's lockdown. Again, we're seeing, you know, so many countries now going and following that suit. And I was finally excited, you know, it's like, okay, you Americans can travel to Europe and we can see some normalcy here. And we can also see some hopefully revival of economy, right, as a result of it, and Europeans can come to America, etc. But now we're seeing other parts of the world experiencing things. We just heard what happened with Olympics. I was so looking forward to Olympics in Tokyo, and when finally they said they don't want it, and I love that they made this decision. They don't want all those athletes that for 4 years worked so hard to qualify and now show up and say, you know, you can't play, because 4 years of rigorous trainings and being selected as a top players brings, you know, everybody forward. But why I'm bringing this up is, but they cannot have the audience. And so you see so many extremely challenging decisions need to be made. And people that are making them, I kudos them. that are vocal, that are transparent, even though it creates pain and unhappiness, ultimately it's creating also the best choice and decision we have at the moment, right? So all of us spectators will watch remotely. We want athletes to be safe, but in the same time, show goes on. What is the alternative, right? But if people cannot agree, and if people just look in what they're losing and how it used to be and living in the past, then you are being arrogant and ignorant and disrespectful of what is happening in the current moment. And it's not always just about you, right? It's about others as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we can take that and kind of blend it back around here to what we're kind of talking about as far as communication. And I'd like to ask this to each of you, when you're talking to businesses, business owners, upper level management, whichever it is, and we're talking about coming to a decision, having input from the troops, and making it be a cohesive plan moving forward instead of just a dictation from the top, kind of like some of the things you mentioned, because if it's not all in, it's not going to be followed. So how do we take these difficult decisions as management, as owners, as leadership, and make sure that everyone is on the same page so that we can move forward and be a part of the solution instead of told the solution?
Well, shall I take it?
Please.
Okay. I think it goes back to what we've always talked about, Glenn, and it's so interesting. I love when methodology and approach is really simplified to just building blocks. And we talk about this when we talk about meeting with a potential client. What someone might define as being a sales call. You've got to ask questions. And I think one of the most important things, and this has always been true, is that people want to know they're being heard. They just want to know that you're actually listening, you're actively listening, and you're asking the questions that make it sound like you really are curious about what they think about this. Of course, with the understanding that everyone's input is going to be a part of this. Not everybody is, it has to be a compromise of sorts, because it's a blending together of potentially several different agendas. But I think if everyone knows they're being heard and they have that input by you asking the right questions, I think that's a good basic building block to accomplishing that task.
Excellent answer. An excellent question, Glenn. What I find that is also an issue in communication and decision, it's a lot of times decision is already being made and people feel left out. And when it's lack of transparency, and even though absolutely leaders reserve the choice to make that decision, but when you know what the choices are and when you are educated, like Olympics case, for example, safety and multinational laws and world watching, right? And something so delicate. For example, imagine that level of decision making there. And then also as a host country, and what you have to do to really secure parameters of not only the games, but safety and security and things that are really adding to all these complexities on top of complexities, right? But when you share and when you are transparent, things are actually not getting better as we expected it when we postponed this once. This is what is going on. And when level honesty and transparency is there and genuine share, we know the difference. We know that is nothing behind or hidden agenda below or something that we're not seeing. We're really all in, and that really takes down the walls and actually help us to arrive together to that choice and decision to support it. And as a result, I see some amazing harmony and progress and things for so many organizations that are doing way more work during this time than they would do otherwise, because they're clear on their path. They're not distracted. They're not trying to do 100 things. They're trying to do one or two, and they're doing extremely well. And people behind Coral, and they're willing to put 100% of effort.
Go ahead, Glenn. Go ahead.
Oh, you were frozen there for a second. You scared me, Paul. I have a question with regards to Olympics, since that's what we've been talking about for a while. So let's talk about another issue that's been in the news, and it's with the hammer throw women. where one person wanted to take their personal beliefs when they were getting the different positions with the Olympics. How do we convey to employees, how do we relate with employees in a work environment that may think that they can bring in their outside opinions to this? Can they bring in their outside opinions to this? Or do they need to kind of toe a company line and keep personal opinions away from business practices?
That's really interesting. And actually, we are very like-minded today, Glenn. Not that we're ever not like-minded, but I was thinking the same thing about. It seems to fly in the face of transparency. It seems to fly in the face of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a secondary question, but I'm interested to hear what Izabela thinks about that, or what you've seen, what you have experienced as an advisor and a coach.
And that is excellent a question again, and I think it requires really to go deep in within, because we're having two issues right now, right? We're all part of, let's say, organization, and we represent that brand, but ultimately we're also individual with our own individual brand. And it's very important to know, that's why we have all these legal contracts and paperwork and miles of reading material, where it's constantly trying to cover everything, where how far and where that gray line it is, or where something stops and where some things end. And all those things got blurred with digital footprint and social media, but also with opportunities to share the opinion, right? And also voluntarily give that opinion. So I'm seeing some people really savvy saying, this is my own independent opinion, not related to my company. But they also, they know that they play in this very dicey area if they're going to go and voice the opinion or something that is not vetoed, and depending also with the position they have. That's why we have less and less, and actually more and more fearful and sluggish executives and CEOs in general leveraging and utilizing social media, even though on contrary, consumers and their talent want to hear from them. And if more transparent you are, more open, and you're more leveraging that, it's actually the voice, right, that they want to hear from you. But it's also one really good question that is sub-question of the question you asked is, who do you on the end of the day represent? And people follow people. They don't follow the brand. They follow that individual, that leader, and what they stand for. So I feel like it's extremely important to have that voice, but also know it again. How do you deliver, and what implications are? If you're trying to bring the dirty laundry, that's a different story. If you're trying to damage the reputation of a company, that's completely another story. But if you're just trying to voice it, being accessible, reachable through masses, through that messaging, I think it's very important then to be extremely transparent and open upfront. How you're sharing, why you're sharing, and what your intent is. And when that is there, when it's there and open with that vulnerability, very rarely you're going to have crisis intervention or risk management intervention due to things going out where you need to engage the PR and everything else. But when you're just careless, when you're just so ignorant and arrogant and not understanding, and also how you come across and how this can be damaging to not only different generations, but frankly, different genders, then we're having very different conversation.
So do you find that there is a lack of embracing transparency because it erodes that strength of purpose that a leader often believes they have to project? In other words, I guess we're all talking about the fine line between sharing too much and sharing too little. As was said on Blabbit weeks ago, Glenn, silence sends a message too.
Absolutely. What is not being said, I always watch for that. And when is something shared and how long it took to be shared, because we are very compulsive and reactive versus proactive and preventative. So if we have the chance to say, this is the lessons we learned in 2020. As a result, we're taking these actions and we're focusing on this. Isn't it beautiful to know, oh my God, you guys are adjusting your game. And this is large change, and this is how it's going to affect the talent, but also this is how it's going to affect our customers. But when you are waiting and waiting for a shoe to drop and some major incident to occur, and then trying to share something, even though you knew already about those risks, then to me, it's too late. Too late, right? And that is the opportunity, I really would say. And you're right, how much is too much? But having the consistency, even if it's a little of share, but consistency of that share, because people love consistency. People love to, they know that they have access to the decision maker, even indirectly. They like to stay known, otherwise rumors starts getting created. People start spinning the wheels, and fear factor is already extremely high. Why won't you then infuse more of the fear and uncomfort and more pain? That doesn't make any sense. And quite frankly, it's quite irresponsible. So you have to, and traditionally, to answer your question, Paul, transparency in the business was not something that traditionally, I'm speaking specifically for America, an American climate, was not something that was disseminated and was always left to very specific tribals, groups, and whatnot. And that's where I get so many in trouble, actually, because they were also doing things that they should not be doing, and they traditionally were able to get away with that. And we now have a snowballing effect when even the good intentions are questioned. And we need to raise the bar in transparency and business ethics, and also high performance leadership, frankly.
I would like to expand a little bit on this, or maybe a little twist, if you would, as we were talking about people sharing, and people probably sharing too much on social media. I know as a parent, we coached our children years ago, be careful what you do because this doesn't go away. And typically that was probably with regards to partying, alcohol, doing things maybe that would not look proper when someone starts to do research upon you. And I think somehow as a society over the past period of time, we've lost sight of that, because as divisive as things become, when someone's looking to hire you, they're going to look at those things. And those could probably provide more obstacles than doors they're going to open based on difference of opinions. So how do we get people to understand everyone should have the ability to have their own opinion? They have a right to it. But your right of having an opinion sometimes may stop when you turn on an electronic device. In the old adage of a teacher that I had in high school that said, you have the right to swing your hand, but it ends at the point where the jaw of the next person begins. So how do we get them to understand that maybe sharing your opinion isn't the best for you long term?
I don't know. I think maybe the horse is already out of the barn. I mean, like you said, and as Izabela has said before, we all have a digital footprint. We do. That doesn't get washed away. It stays. It sticks around. Memories may be short, but digital memory is long. Yeah. So I shake my head as well, Glenn. I shake my head at the things that I see people do, the statements I see people make on social media, the stances that they take, either good and bad, but most of them bad, or highly opinionated and coming from a place that just causes more conflict rather than being more gracious about it all. And I think that we have to grow up as a society a little bit in terms of our utilization of social media. It is a relatively new thing. I mean, in the scope of the universe and humanity, it's a relatively new thing, and I don't think that we have put it in the proper place yet. I don't see it. Maybe more people are treating it with care, but gosh, I hope so.
It's an excellent question. And again, back to multi-generational thing. People that already have very well established understanding of themselves, right? Who they are, what their triggers are, but also the wisdom and knowledge. They know they will not react and act inappropriately exactly for those reasons. they will have this conversation privately. I even see, even when people try to do that, others take a screenshot of emails and messages and they put publicly. Just that shows also lack of others, because you never know how other side will receive that. Always boils down to it, to wisdom, to knowledge and self-awareness, your astuteness in emotionally, what triggers you, your emotional capacity, how to handle stuff, and then also, frankly, emotional intelligence. And that is a cross-generational issue that I see. The gaps in emotional intelligence are not anymore, as they say, older the wiser, and more emotional intelligent. They're not necessarily, actually. And then on top of it, what I'm also wanted to stress out is the social intelligence. So I know you guys, and I know how I want to interact with you. And I position, that is social intelligence, not anymore how serves me, what's all about me, but it's now about you too, as my great colleagues, as somebody I tremendously respect, and also as a guest on your show. So my astuteness is also to see and hear and also dance around that is beautifully orchestrated, right? That is healthy, that is inclusive, and that is open, but also very respectful. And a lot of people don't understand that. And we live in very individualistic culture still that we created and dictated for decades, where individualism was embraced and actually created more depressed people than ever any other generations before. Seriously. I mean, that's actually because we're a species that are meant to interact and actually live and share and contribute, but be part of group, not so badly individually and individualistically driven. And that really showed also a lot of damage. And as a result, we really then stopped looking, how about them? Where this stops just all about me. And I have to say that those are the things that really shocked me, how many people still exuded and exhibited in such a high visible roles, frankly, where their individualism will take over a president that they are actually part of the team and responsible for the team.
Right. You know, I love, the thought just came to mind. Isn't anybody paying attention that when you put something out on social media, you are sharing it? Don't you understand that? That's, do you want to, why would you want to share something that was lascivious or was venomous or anything like that? You know, we are here to share things. That's what they call it on every one of the platforms. So I don't know, everybody get with the program. Okay.
Share the value, be positive, share something that others can learn. Like you guys are creating phenomenal content, and you are constantly bringing great guests and pushing forward, because it's not just so much how you know, but helping others to discover and learn, and for them to know and be in a know, because so much is changing. The differences is huge, right? What is the intent behind it? And that's what I'm saying right now. We're seeing also huge problems with mental health issues around the talent. And I'm a huge proponent and advocate for people to really create great wellness programs, things that we're also traditionally shied away, did not talk about. And now we've seen extreme, somebody sharing all the nitty gritty of their mental health journey. And yes, I can see that the HR teams frowning and in disbelief, but in the same time, people are trying to create a jolt effect, I think sometimes also because they're fed up and they want to change. So we need to really understand, is it counterproductive or is it productive and helping to have a dialogue? So we have to understand, again, socially, that social intelligence, who is recipient, who is this targeted to, and how this may or may not be perceived. And I hear it a lot when they say, don't care what other people think, you do your own thing and you will find your own tribe. And that might be okay if you're trying just to be a small solo entrepreneur. But if you are playing a larger group, a greater game, you really have to understand everybody else as well.
We have a comment.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
Glenn. I think your mic's off.
Thank you.
I was saying thank you, Ahmad. We appreciate that. You know, I think the one thing that maybe it's time to just impress upon, you know, a lot of us from professional have been the optimal student, the lifetime student, trying to learn as much as we can. I think from based off what you were just saying there, Izabela, that I've probably learned more from people that I disagreed with than that I agreed with. But if you're always talking with somebody that has the same opinion of you, you're never going to expand and grow very much.
Hmm. You know, I like saying, and Glenn has heard me say this quite a few times, but I'll say it just for your benefit, Izabela, because I know you agree. But exactly what you said, Glenn, when you talk with someone who is very like-minded, you feel, I use the word enriched to be in that person's presence. When you're speaking with someone who has a contrary point of view, well, that experience is what I call being enlightened. So we have either being enriched or enlightened. So I agree with you 100%, Glenn.
And that is also appetite for a very few people that are willing to go there and capable and able just to listen and probe and ask questions, right? And that's what is that amazing opportunity that every organization has across the board, across the organization, specific multinational ones, where we can truly create an environment where we can ask questions. And even though, again, as I said, if we agree to disagree, that's great too, but it is opportunity to really learn, because not everything is the same and equal, and not everybody is coming from same position. And frankly, the world would be so boring if it is, and we will not be able to innovate and make a change and transform on the level that we truly need to. So that is also one huge impediment that I'm seeing, because and I'm frankly, that is the part of transformation. It's a conscious decision to change something and invest the time to do it. On an individual level, on the team level, and organizational level. Fortunately, transformation, because it's hard or it's so, a lot of work, but in reality is like, would you rather have a little bit hard today or next month or next year and then easy later on? Or would you constantly be in these roller coaster rides with highs and lows and constantly feeling exhausted? I mean, it's a choice, right? Because I'm hearing pain points from every single sector of organization, from operation, from talent and HR, recruiting, and everything that they're dealing with on their plate, as well marketing, sales. So it is very, very challenging, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Well, and I guess let's expand on this just a little bit more if we could. Again, a lot of us spend time building our craft, whether it be learning more about the industry you're in, tactics you're in, and things like this. But this is becoming more and more of a social environment and a social workplace. So if we're not expanding our social skills, our ability to communicate with people of different opinions, are we not limiting our potential for the future?
And I love it. And frankly, I just want to say one thing. Let's all agree the soft skills that I'm being told are soft skills are essential skills. Let's make sure that every kid is learning them in elementary school. As a former educator, I can't tell you, they should be having that from first grade to the fourth grade and nail them down and continue nailing them down as they grow and further develop. Let's also agree that we're a little mislabeling a lot of things. From leadership standpoint, title and power and decision making is not equal to leadership and leadership skills. And let's invest in leadership traits, and let's invest what is needed to lead effectively. When we have those two things nailed down, we're going to have not only a greater generation that's going to be able to tackle these complexities, but right now, frankly, we're not doing service to anyone because we're putting people in situations that it's the way over their head. And why is the way over their head? Because even master's programs and PhD degree programs don't teach you reality of environments you're going to be working in. And the work is completely disrupted. It's going to be disrupted more. Things are extremely speeding up and accelerating. And if you're not comfortable with all of that, you're not only going to be left behind, but you're going to struggle because, again, we're seeing social economically a lot of huge differences right now. And frankly, we're on the global platform, on the global scale, on the global stage recruiting talent. It's not anymore just in our city. It's not just the best talent in New York or New York State or US. We're getting talent from other parts of the world that we can reach and tap into right now.
Right. Now, I just want to go back to a quick point. You were talking about the highs and lows, and I'd like to focus on the highs for a moment. How beautiful is it there in Colorado right now?
It's absolutely gorgeous. It's sunny. Everything is green and lush. We had tons of rain. Everything around Vail, Colorado is amazing. Beautiful wildflowers. I'm just have to say, totally jazzed that I have still this opportunity to be here and work remotely and be able to enjoy these amazing hikes and beautiful views.
Excellent.
Well,
We've got it covered here, Glenn, right? We're
we
West
do.
Coast, Central, we're all over.
I will say, though, just about 3 months ago today, I was driving from Vegas to Denver and was making great time. And just as I hit the pass, I stopped and lost an hour because of a motorhome that caught on fire. So I spent some time near you in a car. We could have been talking. I wasn't doing anything. I couldn't move.
Wow.
Is that a bottleneck there? I'm not familiar. When you go through the pass, is it a...
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have this continental divide that is tunnels to direction, literally built under the mountain. But from both sides, doesn't matter where we come in, are going on very steep slopes. And also because it's high inclination between continental divide and high altitude, a lot of times, even smaller vehicles, specifically large ones, either speed up or don't adjust to steep slopes or whatever might be the case. And then also you have a pressure, you have a heat, other elements, right? And you have a storms. I mean, things happen. And I actually have to say, Glenn, we had a more tunnel closed and all those issues in the good weather versus the winter time when I expect it's going to be the worst, because people will not adjust and create all these issues as you just experience yourself.
Aha.
But it was beautiful driving back and forth.
I'm glad you enjoyed the drive to Colorado otherwise, and you should call me.
Well, speaking of calling you, should anybody want to reach out or connect and communicate with you, what's the best way for them to do so, Izabela?
I always honor, obviously, connection through the LinkedIn or through my personal website, IzabelaLundberg.com. But the best way is truly, if you're listening to this, wanted to know more or just in general talk, feel free to DM me and I will be glad to respond.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Izabela, for sharing so many wonderful insights. And I have to mention, Glenn, I think Izabela got quite a bit of accolades during this broadcast from our live viewers.
She did. It's going crazy on comments on LinkedIn. Some of these things are coming through. Some of them I'm seeing on other pages and things like that. So yes, I think it's been a very great meeting. And thank you very much from my part for being on, Izabela. It's always a joy.
Likewise, great to see you. I'm super excited to be part of it and looking forward to our future conversations. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Everyone, we'll see you back here next week on the same mediums. Have a great week, everyone.